Hey, so today I want to do something a little bit unusual that I don't normally do. Today I want to take some time to walk you guys through some of my favorite films. Recently, I've been having a lot of people come up to me and ask me, what are my favorite films? What are the favorite movies I like watching, and if I have any recommendations for them? And normally I give a few recommendations based off of who it is that's asking, but I can never remember all the films that I really enjoy watching. And so the other day, I got the idea to make a Letterboxd account. I'll put a link to this in the description if you want to follow it. I haven't actually written any reviews for these films, with one exception, which I will talk about. But I thought that I'm a big film buff, and going through some of the favorite movies that I have and giving a little bit of a recommendation for them, I think it'll probably be a little bit of fun. So let's go ahead and jump through these. I only have about 100 films here. I think 103 films that I have rated or reviewed, and that's not because I've only seen 100 films, but these are only films I've seen in the past 2 or 3 years, which I feel like it's appropriate. I don't want to give a rating or recommendation based off of something that I enjoyed when I was 14 years old, because I'm obviously, I hope I have a lot better taste than that now that I am 22, going to be 23 in a month. But anyway, let's go ahead and get through these. These are some of my favorite films, and this is in order from highest rated here to lowest rated down here, lowest rated on the second page, but let's go ahead and talk about some of these films. So first, everything you wanted to know about sex but were afraid to ask. This is a phenomenal film, a hilarious comedy by Woody Allen, one of my favorite filmmakers, one of my favorite directors, favorite comedians. This is a hoot and a holler. If you are in the mood to laugh, I would definitely recommend this. This is not my favorite Woody Allen comedy, but all of his comedies are hilarious, and you'll see a couple more on this list. The Princess Bride, that's a pretty classic movie. I don't think I have to say too much about that. Game Change. This was an interesting HBO film that was about the Republican choice to pick Sarah Palin during the 2008 election, and how it was more about, picking someone that would win them votes rather than picking someone who is best suited to run the country if John McCain dies. And it's a really interesting thing, particularly if you like politics. I would definitely recommend that film. I would recommend you give it a watch. Taxi Driver. This is actually one of the classic, best films ever. This is, people say this is one of the best films ever over and over. I don't really like it as much as most other people do. It may have been that I went into watching it expecting it to be one of the greatest films of all time, because that's what everyone always says, but it's definitely something I would recommend you watch, just for some more perspective on understanding the history of the greatest films ever. Same way that everyone should probably watch Citizen Kane. Next up is Frost versus Nixon. This is a very interesting video, or a very interesting movie about the interview that Robert Frost gave to Richard Nixon after Nixon was impeached. And this was a pretty good film. I don't think it didn't resonate that well with me, but it was very well executed. And it's an interesting story that I hadn't heard be told before. Next up, Django Unchained. I absolutely love Tarantino. You're going to see plenty of Tarantino on here. Django Unchained, I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's Tarantino, right? Quentin Tarantino. Phenomenal. Just absolutely great films. Pretty violent, but great performances by all the actors. Next up, we have The Big Short. Oh, The Big Short. This is one of my favorite films of the year that it came out, last year, right? 2015. Now, that's partially because I am a huge I love investing. I love learning about investing. I love learning about stuff like the 2007-2008 financial crisis. And if you want a very comical and layman's terms sort of explanation of everything that happened during the housing market crash, this is a great film to get that from. It's very well executed. It teaches you a lot, and it's pretty well acted, pretty funny. It's pretty great. Life of Brian. Okay, this has got to be one of my favorites. This might actually be my favorite Monty Python film. Oh my God, it's just genius. It's just genius. Watch that if you haven't already. American Psycho. This is a pretty classic film that a lot of people enjoy. I don't know if I would say I enjoyed as much as most other people do. Not to spoil anything, but there's a lot of ambiguity in it, particularly towards the end. And I can take ambiguity in films, as you will see in later on in this list. But that one was a little bit too ambiguous for me. Hotel Rwanda. A great film. A great film. Heartbreaking film. Actually, I don't know why I have this on here. I didn't watch this. I watched this when I was 16 years old, I think, in high school, which I remember. It's a pretty brutal film that we watched in high school, but it's a great film, great performance, or great execution on a very interesting and very depressing story. Gladiator, absolute classic. The Imposter, this is an interesting documentary that you may have seen from that YouTube guy, Every Frame of Painting. Every Frame of Painting made a video about this, and it spoils the film. It's a documentary. It spoils the documentary, but it's very, very interesting how this was put together. And I think this is an interesting... this is a documentary that will... If you're the kind of person that likes documentaries, I would recommend that you watch this, particularly because this will make you think about how you can make a documentary, about how you can, like, how putting together a documentary can change the story. Not spoiling too much. Brazil, this is a great film, but it's a little bit depressing for me. This is a dystopian sort of dark comedy thing where if you like that sort of thing, I would recommend it 100%, but I am not very into dystopian things. Hateful Eight, Hateful Eight, pretty good. Most recent Quentin Tarantino film. It might be my least favorite. I might actually put Django Unchained above it, but it's still a great film. Typical Tarantino. If you like Tarantino, I assume you probably have already seen it, but if you're a Tarantino fan, you'll love it. True Grit, this was the 2010, this was a remake, right, of True Grit, and I would say this was pretty good. A Coen Brothers film. Pretty good, but I didn't actually like it as much as a lot of other people do. Take that with what you will. It didn't leave as lasting of an impression on me, which is why it's lower rated on this big list, but it's still a pretty great film. I'll try and go a little bit faster. We got a lot to get through here. Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Phenomenal film. Beautiful film. Just, oh my God, the best cinematography I've ever seen, and a very interesting story that I always, I love learning about those, Old West stories. Next up, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Oh my God, this is one of my favorite films. It's also Mitt Romney's favorite film, fun fact. Great classic that you should probably have already seen. The Master, this was a pretty interesting film that was sort of supposed to be about Scientology, or it tells a story that sort of parallels Scientology. It has absolutely beautiful cinematography. It has some great acting. It's very long. Paul Thomas Anderson. It's a film that you can definitely not enjoy. I could see some people not enjoying it, but it's super artistic and gritty and a great, well executed film. Memento. If you like twisty things, watch Memento. If you like twisty films and you have not seen Memento, oh my goodness, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Reservoir Dogs, absolute classic. First Tarantino film, great film. Porco Rosso, this is actually one of my favorite Miyazaki films. People make fun of me for it because it's like so goofy, right? A pig that's dogfighting, but I just love it so much. It's so great. Silence of the Lambs, absolutely phenomenal classic. Again, a classic that I assume most of you guys have seen. If you have not seen it, then you should probably give it a watch. Same deal with Fight Club, classic. Do not look up anything about it. Just go and watch this if you have not seen it already. American Beauty is a great film that I'm surprised to hear that not that many people like. I believe this won Best Picture, or that Kevin Spacey won Best Actor from it. This got like Oscars, and it was a really well put together film. I love films like that sort of have artistic visions, and even if they aren't something that I particularly agree with or think that much myself, I love it when people try and put messages into films and try and push forward an artistic vision. Spotlight was the Best Picture winner from a year ago. This is a story that sort of chronicles the reporters that uncovered the pedophilia ring in the Catholic Church, the whole Catholic Church cover-up of abusing boys, and a very terrible story, but it's super interesting. Like I can't even speak straight. It's super interesting and kind of heartbreaking, but really intense seeing the reporters who uncovered the story and broke it, which it's It's a very gritty and dark film, but super good. I believe it's on Netflix right now. Howl's Moving Castle, again, Miyazaki. Everybody loves Miyazaki. Magnificent Seven. This is a film from 1960 that surprisingly holds up pretty well today. I watched this with my dad a couple of months ago, and it's incredibly good. This is based off the Seven Samurai, that same story, and I would highly recommend you see it if you have not already. Hunt for Red October is one of the first films I ever saw, and it is one of my favorites. I rewatch it all the time. I don't know how much of that is me just enjoying it because it was one of the first films I've ever seen, but it is really, really good in my opinion. To Kill a Mockingbird, again, another classic that I would recommend you watch. This is probably a book that you read in school, particularly if you live in America, but oh my God, this film is so well put together. This film made my dad become a lawyer, and it almost got me to become a lawyer. Atticus Finch is such a great character, and oh my God, I could rave about this film for a really long time. Don't know why I only have it at 4 stars. I should put it at 5. Bananas. This might be my favorite or second favorite Woody Allen film, or comedy Woody Allen film. It is absolutely hilarious, particularly if you know anything about like the Cuban Revolution and revolutions in Latin American countries. It's sort of based off of, the main character getting wrapped up in in one of those. I don't want to spoil any of the jokes. Another great Woody Allen film, and probably tied with Bananas for my favorite comedy, is Love and Death. Again, oh my God, I just love Woody Allen, man. This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. His comedy films are one of the funniest films I've ever seen. Next up, Big Lebowski, phenomenal classic. Again, I assume most of you have seen it. Argo was I think this won Best Picture in 2012, or it got nominated for a lot of Oscars. I think this was really good. This was about the what was it, like the Hollywood actors or whoever that were trying to get the Americans that were trapped in the Canadian embassy in Iran during the revolution, or Iraq? No, it was Iran, right? A really interesting story that this has a lot of tense moments, and it's pretty well acted. I enjoyed it quite a bit. 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't actually enjoy it as much as most other people do, and I don't think it's like one of the greatest films ever, which is why I only have it at 4 stars, but still pretty great film. And I would, again, if you're a film buff like me, you should probably see it just for the sake of making sure that you can say you've seen it. Tex Avery, The King of Cartoons. This is a documentary that might be the greatest documentary I've ever seen, and it has like nobody's seen it. This is all on YouTube. The entire thing is on YouTube. Go watch it. It's great. It talks about Tex Avery, who was the guy that invented Bugs Bunny, the Warner Brothers, MGM. Oh my God, this is another thing I could rave about for a really long time. The thing that I love about this was that particularly back during this time, during the early 1900s, when cartoons and all this was coming out, Disney was like the number one Goliath, the big monster that dominated the market for like cartoons and animations. And Warner Brothers and Tex Avery decided that because Disney was so big, they weren't going to try and compete with them. They instead decided to go after a different market. While Disney was trying to just make films for kids, make cartoons for kids, they decided to try and make cartoons for young adults and adults just as much as kids. And it was absolutely, oh my God, I loved learning about that. That's a very well put together documentary. It might be one of my favorite documentaries other than Jiro Dreams of Sushi. The Prestige and The Illusionist, these films are the butt end of a couple of jokes about how in 2006 there were just these two almost indistinguishable from each other films about magicians that came out, and they are both very good. The Prestige, most people would rate a lot higher, but I enjoyed The Illusionist quite a bit for the artistic I loved a lot of the cinematography and a lot of the framing in that film, whereas The Prestige is like very, I don't want to say it's super twisty or like talk about too much to spoil, but most people would probably like The Prestige more. But I would say don't sleep on The Illusionist. The Illusionist can also be pretty enjoyable. Crimes and Misdemeanors. This is when Woody Allen started getting a lot more serious, and you can tell a lot of people really found his more serious films to be more critically acclaimed, and this is a very, very well put together story. Again, a classic that I would recommend that almost everybody see. Miller's Crossing, one of the earliest Coen brother films. This is the film where the phrase "what the rumpus" came from, and I still say that to this day. Great film. I love Irish accents. What's the rumpus? I would recommend that a lot. Requiem for a Dream, a pretty depressing but like super psychedelic and very real film that, great music. I'm sure you guys have heard the theme of this it played a million times. It's a great, great film. The Revenant, this is a film that came out in 2015, and you probably remember it. Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, however you pronounce his name. He was the guy that made Birdman, and this was his following film that got Leonardo DiCaprio his first Oscar. Now, this is a film that you might find pretty boring. It's very beautifully shot, but a lot of people might say, oh, this is kind of boring. I don't find it that interesting. And if you think it's kind of boring, remember, this is a true story. This is a true story of something that actually happened to Hugh Glass. There are some, it's not 100% true to life. You can look up the story of what ended up happening to him. In real life, but I would definitely recommend this film. It's a very intense film, and it's a lot more enjoyable when you realize that this all actually happened. So I would recommend keeping that in mind. Indiana Jones, absolute classic. How could you not like Indiana Jones? Interstellar, I only watched recently, and I would say Interstellar is almost like a better version of 2001: A Space Odyssey. A lot of people would probably shoot me for saying that, but I think Interstellar is, oh my God, absolutely phenomenal. Some people say it's a little bit predictable, but it's a very, very well put together film, and I love sciencey things like this. If you're a big fan of science and space and stuff, I assume you've already seen it, but just in case you haven't. The Lego Movie, oh my God, Legos are my favorite thing of all time, and the Lego Movie does, like any of you that didn't watch this because you thought, oh, they're making a sellout movie just to cash in on the popularity of Legos, and they're ruining this toy that I used to like as a kid. No, don't think like that at all. This does them justice. This does everything justice. Definitely watch this if you, for some reason, have not seen it. It's really well put together and absolutely phenomenal. No Country for Old Men I only watched recently, but oh my God, this is really intense, really gritty, and really good. I probably should actually put it at 4 or 5, or 4.5 or 5 stars. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal film, and I would definitely recommend it 100%. Tokyo Godfathers, Satoshi Kon. If you are a weeb and you have not heard of Satoshi Kon, then you have got to watch this film. You guys will be seeing another one of his films very soon. Phenomenal film. Now this one, Pear Cider and Cigarettes. This is the only film that I've written a review for because, oh my God, this is such a good... This is a short film. This is a short animation that was it got an Oscar nomination. It's 35 minutes long, and it's so incredibly good. The art for it is so beautiful. It tells a really interesting story, but everybody hates it. I don't actually understand. Why does everybody hate this film? It's really well put together. The art is really interesting. A lot of people don't find the main character to be that likable, but he's not supposed to be likable. This is a true story about Robert Valley and a childhood friend that he had, where he was such a force of nature that he couldn't help but want to tell this story. And I have a lot of people in my life or one person in particular in my life that I can definitely relate to in that kind of way. And I 100% understand why why you would want to tell this story, even if the main character is a little bit of a degenerate, you might say. Absolutely recommend watching this. This is on Vimeo. You should go watch this right now, and this is a lot better than people give it credit for. The Godfather, absolute classic. If you have not seen The Godfather, what is wrong with you? Same with Lawrence of Arabia, absolute classic. So good. One of my favorite films. I should actually, again, my ratings are a little bit messed up here. That needs to be 5 stars. There we go. Next up, Spirited Away. Phenomenal film. Probably one of the best Miyazaki films, although you can't see that Princess Mononoke ahead of it. Perfect Blue. This is my favorite Satoshi Kon film, and this is so well put together. Oh my goodness. The cuts and the editing, and this takes advantage of the anime medium of how you can tell a story through anime rather than just having a story that you tell with it does cool things with the visuals that you can only do in anime, and it does a great job of telling a story that I don't want to go too in detail with because I don't want to spoil it. Blazing Saddles, hilarious. If you have not seen this, go watch it. Oh my God, classic, hilarious. Oh, I just watched this with my girlfriend last night. It's so good. Sonatine. This is Takeshi Kitano. You guys remember that old donkey video about Takeshi Kitano's weird game? I forget what his game was called, but this is a guy who's like the Japanese Woody Allen, where he started off as a stand-up comedian, but then he started making these films that are all gritty and realistic, and he writes and directs and stars in them all. This is maybe my favorite film of his. It is so good. It has a lot of really fun things that are... Again, I don't want to go too much in detail and spoil any of it, but this is a very good film that I would highly recommend, particularly if you like Japanese stuff, but you're a weeb and you've only seen anime. I would recommend that you go and watch Sonatine 100%. Nebraska. This is a film that came out in 2013. It stars it stars Will Forte, actually, in this pretty gritty but kind of funny black comedy film where it's about this guy sort of reconnecting with his father and his family. It sounds really boring when you hear someone put a story like that, but this is one of my favorite films, particularly because this does such a good job of explaining and sort of detailing the lives of how a lot of people live with relation to their family, where they don't know a lot about them. And this description is not doing this film justice. This is 100% phenomenal, and I would highly recommend watching it. Next up, The Hurt Locker, absolute classic. So good. If you have not seen this, you gotta see it. This is like the pinnacle of drama and the pinnacle of suspense. Oh my God. Inception, one of my favorite Christopher Nolan films. So twisty, so beautiful, so incredibly awesome. Oh my God, I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan. Also, Wes Anderson fan. The Grand Budapest Hotel, probably my favorite Wes Anderson film, and it is phenomenal. Again, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. The story is so well put together. Highly recommend it. Could not recommend it more. The Social Network, this should have 100% won Best Picture over The King's Speech. Thank you very much. David Fincher is so well put together. Again, you're going to hear me saying that a lot of compliments as we get up here towards my top favorite films, and The Social Network definitely ranks among them. I'm sure most of you guys have seen it. Donnie Darko, I would recommend, if any of you are teenagers and you have not seen this film yet, go watch it right now. Like 100%. I didn't see this film until this year, and I'm 22 right now, again, going 23 in a couple of weeks. I wish I saw this when I was a teenager. I feel like that would have made being a teenager a lot better. Go watch it, and when you watch it, watch the original cut. Don't watch the director's cut. The director's cut is 133 minutes long. The original cut is 113 minutes long, I think. Watch the 113-minute version. It's a lot more ambiguous in a good way. That's ambiguity in a good way compared to American Psycho, which I would argue is ambiguity in a little bit of a bad way. Anyway, though, Jaws, next up. This is one of my favorite films. This is just one of the best stories told in one of the best ways. That should be 5 stars. Thank you very much. This is a lot of people's favorite film. It's something that it's so well put together, and it's just a story that's told in such a, the story itself is not twisty. It doesn't make you think. It's nothing special in the way that it questions your philosophy or anything. It's just a really good story told in one of the best ways that you can by one of the best directors. So, if for some reason you have not seen it, go and watch it. There Will Be Blood. This is a very highly critically acclaimed film that is really good, really, really good. I don't know if I would rank it as like my favorite film or as high as all the other favorite films I have up here. Just because I don't, with some of these films that like came out in 2007 or 2006 or 2000, like some of the older films you can definitely not appreciate as well as if you did when they first came out. I did not see this when this first came out. I saw this about a year ago, and it's a really good film. You can recognize how well put together it is and everything, but again, this is something that you may not appreciate quite as much as if you're someone who saw it when it first came out in theaters. Akira is probably my favorite anime film of all time. This holds up incredibly well for something that came out in 1988. The anime art style is a little bit odd, I can admit. It's a little bit odd. Just with like the faces and the way that the faces are all animated and everything, you can tell that it's kind of old with like the whole bean shape of the face, which isn't something you see as much in anime anymore. But this is, again, probably my favorite anime film of all time, although we do have Princess Mononoke still to talk about. Next up, though, we have Fargo. Again, Coen Brothers, one of my favorite Coen Brothers films. I love films like this that take place in the Midwest, not because I'm from the Midwest, but because there's a lot of stories in the Midwest that you don't typically see being told, and a lot of a lot of fun things that you don't really see in film all that often, like particularly in this film, how everyone's super polite and always says, yeah, oh yeah. Minnesota, just like Minnesota is basically America's Canada, isn't it? Anyway, great film. If you haven't seen it for some reason, gotta watch it. But maybe my favorite Coen Brothers film would not be, probably wouldn't be Fargo. It would be Barton Fink. A fun story about Barton Fink, when the Coen Brothers were making where is it? When the Coen brothers were first writing the Miller's Crossing, when they were writing Miller's Crossing, they ran into writer's block, and then they took a break from writing Miller's Crossing to write Barton Fink, which is an entire film about writer's block. Why is this not rated? There we go. It's an entire film about writer's block. It's so good, so surreal. If you enjoy surreal things, you will 100% enjoy this film, and it is, again, so well put together. Favorite Coen Brothers film. Princess Mononoke might be my favorite Miyazaki film, but this might be just because this is the only one I got to see on the big screen. I saw this when I was at I saw this a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago or so, when it was screening for its 20th anniversary special, and it is so beautiful, and the story is so great. Oh my god, all of Miyazaki is great, though. Now, these are my favorite films. I'm going to go out of order for these. First up, Pulp Fiction, favorite Tarantino film. So good. Classic. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. That's all I can really say about that. Birdman is my favorite film when it comes to the best film I've ever seen about people making things. As someone who makes YouTube videos and streams and tries to be a creative, artistic person, even if it is just stupid videos on the internet, I love it when there's stories that are told about people in a similar situation, people that go and make a story told about people who make things, people who make movies, or people who write and whatnot. And Birdman has to be the best story I've ever seen when it comes to that stuff. I've never seen a story told better than Birdman does when it comes to what it's like to be an artist and all that. Highly recommend it, particularly if you're an artist or something like that. Whiplash is, oh my god, Whiplash is so intense. I love jazz. I love Whiplash. I love these stories about young people that try and go and become great at things. And if you like them too, you will like Whiplash, although I assume a lot of you guys have probably already seen it. Phenomenal film. And then that leaves us with my 3 favorite films of all time. Oh, The Godfather 2. Forgot The Godfather 2. This is the greatest film ever. Just in terms of like the everything, the dialogue, the story, the framing, the beautiful shots, the sets. This is just the best. It's hard to argue otherwise. And if you have somehow not seen it, you got to see it. But now we're back to my 3 favorite films of all time: Primer, Annie Hall, and Stardust Memories. Let's start off with Stardust Memories. Stardust Memories is Woody Allen's film where it falls into the same vein of Birdman, where it's a film about someone who's a director and someone who's trying to cope with it reminds me a lot of myself. In this film, it's basically Woody Allen's first film where he was taking he was leaving the comedies that he was doing, the stuff like Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, and Bananas, and Love and Death. He was leaving these funny films to try and make more meaningful things, and this was one of his first films, and people didn't really like it. People just wanted him to make funny films again, and so he made this film where he's always having people come up to him, and they're all like, "Oh, I loved all your films, especially the early funnier ones." And that's something that people say to me, even to this day. "Oh, Jibe, I love all your League videos, especially the early educational ones." It does such a great job of showing how weird it is being a famous person and wanting to interact with people that enjoy your work, but not really being able to because they know everything there is to know about you, but they're all just strangers to you. This is the greatest film I've ever seen. Oh my god, I want to say it's the greatest film I've ever seen. I'd actually rate this in the same category as Birdman, but above Birdman. I probably misspoke a little bit when it came to that Birdman stuff. But anyway, Annie Hall would be the next, again, one of the top 3 favorite films of all time. This is another Woody Allen film, but this is a lot more accessible to everyone. Super funny, super great. You don't have to be a YouTuber. You don't have to be a filmmaker to be able to appreciate this. This is one of the funniest films I have ever seen. It's so clever, it's so witty, and it's a classic that everybody should see. And then finally, the third big one that I love is Primer. This is one of the most confusing films that you'll see if you haven't seen it already. It's super confusing, but it's so real. It's super, super realistic. It's a movie that I don't really want to talk too much about what it is, although you could probably just read the description here and then see what it is. It's so real that it's about science. It's about a story of, at its core, I guess, when I think about it, it's a story about 2 people that have a relationship that's destroyed over a scientific invention they create. But this is a really interesting story for a number of different reasons. It's an interesting story if you like twists. It's an interesting story if you like a phenomenal indie film that was made with a budget of like $6,000. It was so cheap. It was so ridiculously... They were just paying for it with pennies, but they were able to put this masterpiece together that is one of my favorite films of all time. Shane Carruth, again, he's the guy that directed it, who wrote it. That's him right there. He starred in it. And I am a massive Shane Carruth fan. This is one of my favorite films, one of my 3 favorite films of all time. And there you go. Those are my favorite films. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I didn't really expect this video to get to 30 minutes long, but there you go. If you are looking for any sort of recommendations for films, whether it's something as long and twisty as Primer or something as short as a 30-minute animation like Parasite and Cigarettes, there you go. There's some recommendations. I hope you guys all enjoyed watching. Excuse me. I hope you guys all enjoyed watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, though, have a wonderful day.